Let me just make sure my mic on. Jesus Lord. Sorry guys for having the mic on.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Let's do this, Landon. Landon.
Text that has been used in the Caribbean. The volumes analyze cases from Eastern Caribbean, of course, Barbados, Trinidad, Jamaica, and one or two jurisdictions. I have it here before me. And I'm not sure whether you could see anything. Maybe if I turn off my light. This is what it looks like. Gosh, yes. So there are. Hey, Joe.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Who's excited? Who's nervous?
Say that again.
Who's excited? Who's nervous? I have a combination of both. More nervous though.
Why are you nervous, Ebony?
Until I get my grade back for this first assignment, I'll be nervous. So at least I will know, okay, you did something good or you messed up big time.
You completed your first draft for all?
I didn't do the last one instead, if I'm honest. but
Sorry?
the last one,
The last question?
I have not done as yet.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
why you're
but
nervous and anxious.
I completed
you
two and a
just-
half. The Gregory, 2.5.
Okay. What you
Same
did,
here,
Felicia?
too.
That's Joey?
Yeah. I'm nervous too, but thankfully we still have another week
Another
and like
week.
2 days to get it done. So
But if I'm
Guys,
honest,
you guys are doing well.
I want to submit by say that Saturday, Sunday the latest. 'Cause I don't want to take the chance of system issues on Monday.
right. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, that's my
Yeah, I'm trying to finish by Monday.
Monday coming.
Yeah,
That's a good target. And then you can use the next couple of days to go over it again, right?
right. It's just I'm just trying to finish this draft by Monday
Right.
so I can
Okay.
clean up anything that I need.
Right.
Yeah, that's really I wanted to have that done now, but I didn't get to do that. But I will by weekend. I want to have that done.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. By Sunday, I'm trying to finish the first draft of everything and then just proofread and do the referencing and
Yeah.
good stuff.
Right.
So, which gives it sufficient time. So there's plenty time left, So
Yeah, there is.
It's
There is a
a
lot
good
of time.
chunk. It's a good chunk, David. It's a good chunk of change.
I know.
Yeah. But
Oh,
you
y'all
get
stuck
caught
there
up.
with no time. Y'all no
Yeah,
time. It's roll
Well,
quickly.
if you would have done at least 2 of the questions, right? Where you just have to go back in and clean it up, then you still have 2 questions to tackle within a week. So it could be done.
yeah.
But,
I
but
mean,
those 2 questions, there's still a lot of reading.
Yeah, it is a lot of research.
That
But I've seen in the group a lot of articles being shared, right?
yeah.
Right.
And I must
Yeah.
thank all of you who've been sharing some. I don't remember who it was shared something this week. I think it was really, really helpful
mhm.
Yeah.
to me. So I thank a lot of y'all who've been sharing.
But
My
like
question
I was telling Sophie today. Question 2 could basically be answered from fada-gaffy.org. Their report on professional money launderers. You could basically answer the whole of question 2
The
just from that
18th,
article.
2018 report, eh?
Right.
Yeah. Wasn't that
Additionally-
shared in the group too?
I wanted
report?
to
120.
I want to ask a question on 2, right? You know, the last bit where they say highlight some of the methodologies utilized in their activities, right? Is that referring to the services that they can provide, like acting as a nominee or stuff like that? Or is it referring to something else? I just wanted clarification on that bit.
Well,
Well, it'll
what I
be
did,
good to get
I
other
don't know.
feedback, but my understanding, and I guess we can share understanding of methodologies was
The mechanisms that they use, eh?
which is
Like the trade.
wire transfers, like the different ways they launder to me,
Right.
the different methods they
Seems
use.
like we're on the same page with that. So different methods that they use.
Yeah.
Which
Okay,
makes
So
it
when I
better
did some
to see, right?
research,
Because they're professionals. So
when I did some research, I came across like the different mechanisms what professional money launderers use, like trade-based money laundering. They use underground banking,
yeah.
Yeah,
alternative
that's what I was trying to figure out.
banking.
That.
So those are tools and techniques that they use, whereby the networks are like more so like the organizations, like talking about like the all of the money, like say Money Mules network, and then they had proxy networks. Those were like just the different organizations, or like I guess ways of how. Well, I guess we probably need clarification on that too, because one was saying there were networks and organizations, and then the tools and techniques they use to launder those monies were basically like the trade-based ones and underground banking and stuff like that.
Okay, so it's
That needs some clarification.
the trade-based money laundering and the
Underground
account
banking.
settlement mechanisms. That would be
Yeah, you got it. That would be the
Okay.
methods.
Okay, the methodologies. Okay,
So that's
have
the
a question.
methodology. Because I just went by the stages, and then I gave those examples. So I don't know
Yeah,
if
I went by the
anybody else
stages.
did that.
I think it's a
Yeah,
combination. I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I think it's a combination of trade-based account settling. It's a combination of the 3 stages that they use, and a combination of other methods like doing it through crypto, wiring. So I think it's like a combination of them all.
Mhm.
I have a question. I think
Most of them are
Patrick
trying
had
to.
mentioned for question 2, the 2018 report, FATF, I think you said GF. Can you, one of you repeat that for me?
RF
That's
Gaffy.
the That's the.
Can you spell it for me? I can't hear you clearly. Sorry.
Okay, I'm gonna type it in the chat. Well, I'll copy the link. And put it in.
Also, thank you.
Also, the ICA website has some good information on professional money launderers as well. They have quite a bit of information that's similar to the FATF 2018 report.
So with this, right? How I did it was just, I know Farida said they just want to see how we think critically, whether we are critical thinkers when it comes to this. So I believe question 2, because Nassau, Bahamas, and our jurisdiction, we don't have any terrorism response basically in record, or examples, terrorism examples in record, or professional money laundering examples in record. So how I can plug our jurisdiction in is, I guess, try fit in some offshore banking into how professional money launderers may use offshore banking services to help facilitate their scheme. I don't know if anybody else was
I
kind of.
mean,
You can-
if you think about it, the Bahamas is like a bank hub. This is like the place. We have over 250 banking exchange.
We're a tax haven, Zena.
I understand that.
No, we're not. We're not. Hi, good afternoon. Please, let's not use that word, because we're not. We pay taxes here.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, what I'm thinking is, yeah,
that's the correct wording. Okay, low tax jurisdiction. Yes.
Sorry, I was about to change my wording, because in comparison to other jurisdictions, I think that our tax rates are lower, right? So perhaps not a tax haven, but we pay lower taxes.
but I think when it comes to professional money laundering, when you look at what we may not be able to I guess facilitate all of the methods or mechanisms that professional money launderers may use. But I mean, we may not have the cases here because, like they said, I mean, how often do you see persons who launder money being hauled off the court? But at the same time, that doesn't mean that it's not happening. If you think about like how many banks exist here and how many clients each of those banks have internationally, the persons who
Shell
work
companies too, right?
shell companies and people, this is like a passage. So I to say that
we do not have shell companies.
To say that
we do not have shell companies. Wait, hold on, wait.
We not under our
which
regulation, we can't.
Which class are you in? You all sure I'm in the right class tonight? What y'all
Well,
talking about?
we conduct KYC to ensure that we don't onboard shell companies.
It is illegal to have shell companies in this country.
Trying to say that it's
Felicia, you could type what you just said in the chat. I didn't hear you about the shell companies.
I think what we meant to say is that we have a very large company registry here in the Bahamas, right? And so that company registry could be used to conduct illicit activity, right, Zena? Are we on the same page? Because I'm thinking that this is the train of thought that Zena is sharing as well.
Joey?
No, I was just trying.
no.
I was just trying to say that saying that we don't have a lot of professional money launderers here is like kind of far fetched because we probably have more than most in the Caribbean.
Hi. Okay, how y'all doing?
Child, you didn't confuse me, so I don't know. Go ahead.
Well,
I was
Joey,
doing
y'all done
okay.
confuddled my mind because I don't know where y'all is be working, but we are one of the best regulated jurisdictions in the world. So we don't do shell companies, it's illegal. We have the beneficial registry, ownership registry, so we know who owns our companies. We know who our directors are. We know all of that information. So I don't know where y'all getting your information from, but let's clear it up at the beginning of this class. We do not have shell companies. We are well aware of who owns the companies that we have because it is now illegal for you not to know. Every registered office and agent in this country had to inform the government of the Bahamas through the BOSS system, who are the owners, directors, shareholders, down to the person, the ultimate beneficial owner of the companies in this country. So yeah,
Miss-
let's roll that back. Let's roll that back.
I will be devil's advocate here, and I will say that though you have members listed at the company registry as the members or the shareholders of those companies, does not mean that that literally has to be the case.
Yeah, and that's fine. Our job.
And I agree with you. And I agree with you.
We just have to identify someone. So as far as we're concerned, we did our job and we have someone identified. And that goes a lot, like all these Russian people right now. What you think happening? What you think happening? Come on. But as far as I'm concerned, you provided documentation to say that ABC owns this. Now, if in all actuality, XYZ owns it, who is a Russian, I can't link that because I have all the documentation that says ABC owns it. So I did my due diligence to ensure that ABC is an American citizen who owns these shares. Now, what happens behind closed doors, I don't have any control over it until it's brought to my attention and I can deal with it. But other than that, I only could go off of what these corporate documents say.
Plus,
Felicia, what's a scenario as to how it will be brought to your attention, or how would it be brought to your attention?
Okay.
Negative news.
Right. Negative news, or sometimes fishy things just happen. And, you know, I think it was Reed who said, oh no, that was in another class where they made the comment that, you know, compliance professionals are not nosy. We ask questions because we need to know. So even right here and having a conversation, you know, we would say something like, oh, only 10 people in this class, right? Only 10 people supposed to be in this class, but I look and it's 22 people in here. So I'm not going to just brush that off. I'm going to now screenshot this screen because only 10 people supposed to be in here and I have 12 extra people. Who are these extra people and why are they in this class? So no one necessarily did anything wrong, you know. I probably got the wrong news where that they said only 10 people were registered so far. You know, so I now have to go and do my due diligence to find out that it was the person at the school thing. Only 10 people were registered so far. Not only 10 people could be in the class. So it's just pretty much just listening and being vigilant, honestly, and just linking. You know, you just can't go off of this and say, okay, whenever you run a search and you see links, you have to follow the link. So it just don't stop. I'm not just gonna put your name in one search engine and leave it. No, if I see some links there, I'm going to follow all of those links until I definitively eliminate you from being a person of interest.
Okay, so thanks so much for that, Felicia. Let's roll this class back a bit because I walked into a conversation and y'all have all of my blood curling in my body at the moment. What are we talking here and why are we talking? What are we talking about?
We were just
discussing the assignment.
We're discussing the assignment.
Okay, and that's the professional money launderers one?
Yes.
Okay.
That was the one you came in on, yeah.
Okay. Because y'all got me way out here thinking, what in the world, what am I doing wrong with these people?
Just for clarity, the question was asked and we answered what we think it is, but let's get your view. question 2, when they refer to the methodologies, is that the methods being used, for instance, the underground banking, the wire transfers, stuff like that?
I honestly think it's the first part with the lawyers and accountants and all of that. But the thing is, I think now that I'm thinking about the whole question, the mere fact that the methodology is actually the way it's done. So yes, from that perspective, but you also need the people to do it, right?
Yes.
Yes. So I think
Okay.
it's a combination of both.
Okay. That's what you came in on.
Okay, so in order to have something done, you need somebody to do it. But the methodology is the way things are done. The method in which it's done. That's why they use the word methodology.
And the method
Like
in
I
which
say.
they do it, wouldn't that constantly change?
Yes.
Well, I mean, and crime's constantly changing, so I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, so it's not just a set answer that you can say because things has changed drastically now. So
Yeah, but didn't they give you all something to read to go with this question?
Yeah.
Yeah, they
See,
did.
I didn't read that. I didn't have that document, so I didn't read that.
Yeah, they did.
Right, so I don't know what's in that document, but I'm guessing that should have been able to help you with the question. It didn't? Does it sound like you're all confused?
It helped. No, it helped. It helped. It really did.
Okay. Joey, what I confused you on, because you said I got you confused, because you had me confused.
I have a question when you're done with it, please.
I confused no more. I all right. I good.
You good? You sure?
Yeah, man, I good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Ebony, that's, oh, no problem. That's
You
you who
already
have a question?
scared Joey.
Yeah.
What you saying, Ebony?
Going back to your response about the methodology, you said, of course, you need the people to do the methods, but the people wouldn't be the PMLs?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted that. Okay.
That's like,
I didn't hear you.
Ms. Sands, I think you're breaking up because we don't hear you at all.
okay, because my entire Zoom closed out.
We can hear you now.
My apologies. So David,
Hi.
I think, do you understand where I'm coming from? Because I think we had a side conversation and.
Yeah, we did. I mean, I was just trying to get an understanding, but like you said, it's a combination. Obviously, the underground banking is a mechanism, and that's something that can discuss because that's one of the ways, the methods that are used.
That's a method, yes.
So that you could discuss that, or you could talk about cash, the smurfing, and there's all kind of combinations that are used by individuals, or it depends on who it is basically, because obviously there's 3 types of, I guess, professional money launderers: the individuals, the group, network, blah, blah, blah. So they use different methods to money launder. So you could talk about those different methods to that extent. That's my understanding of it, and that's how I would approach it.
And I think that's the right way to approach it.
Same
You
here.
can't have one without the other. Yes?
Yes, ma'am. That's how I approach it. I just wanted to, we'll be discussing it to make sure that we were on the right track. All of us was on the wrong track together. But we were good.
Okay, everybody good on that?
I think
So
we're
we
on the right track.
Unit 6. Did anybody even bother to read Unit 6?
No, ma'am, I did
I'll
not.
be honest,
I'm honest.
no.
I did assignment. I didn't look at your answer.
Yeah, I've been focusing on the questions more so than anything.
I'm also a question focused. I did not.
Yeah.
I did not read.
So what y'all trying to tell me is,
I was working on this research.
Sorry, Biscan, but it's
y'all,
crunch time.
y'all come to class tonight. And ain't nobody even look at what we supposed to be discussing tonight. What a time.
The only thing
I
did was
honestly thought we
question.
were discussing the research paper tonight.
Why would we be discussing
think
that and we had a time for that?
Just was a
Wishful
thought.
thinking?
Well, maybe we had that conversation early on in the semester, and this is why I said, let's start early. We had, I think, numerous occasions to have conversations, and I've been trying to assist at the end of every class for the last couple of weeks, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I need to be throwing no rock at nobody who want to take the last week and a half to try do all of this work when I've been saying from week 2, y'all look, y'all start, y'all try. Yes?
Ms. Hans, if
Hi.
if I say I really wanted to read and I couldn't even find an hour to read, that make it any better?
Not really.
I tried. I really tried. I promise you, I tried.
Not really. So how y'all expect us to go to class, go through class tonight and ain't nobody even look at the unit? How?
Hi, good night. I'm with everybody else with doing the assignment, but I did look over the chapter just to have a little bit of an idea as to what we would be discussing and on sanctions.
Colleen, you can't help out your teammates because ain't none of them look. Only you, the only one.
Colleen, I
Like I said, I'm in the boat with them, but I just I took about
Hold on,
let's say
Colleen,
20
you in the
minutes.
boat with them?
No,
Or you
I'm saying
one foot in and one foot out?
one foot in and one foot out, because what I did was I took about 20 minutes or so to, glance it to make sure I have something to talk about if need be, but the assignment did take a lot of time.
Okay. Interesting. ICA AML. Can you mute your mic for me? Miguel, that's you? Who recording for me tonight? Whose screen is ICA AML?
I met them on when I came on, so I'm not sure who started it.
That's normally Miguel or somebody from BIFS.
Yeah.
But he is saying mute and he did, and I am not, he hasn't made me co-host yet, so I can't mute him. Give me 1 second, guys. Well, actually, I can. I am co-host. Let me see if I can mute him. Okay. Hello?
Hi.
Y'all can hear me? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So sanctions is a huge deal considering y'all living in a time when sanctions is all we're talking about. Nobody saw it as that way. Nobody saw it as, oh my God, this is what the whole world is talking about, this war and the sanctions that are coming into play because of it. No? I think nobody interested this week?
Yes, Ms. Sam.
Yes.
That's it, yeah.
I think we said something about this last week, right?
It just ain't pique y'all interest enough to read. That's what y'all trying to say to me.
No, we trying to say this was a rough week. This was a rough week for us. I'm following up.
Really, Alicia? It's rough because you're trying to finish your paper.
Let me tell you how rough it was.
We're here trying to save the world.
I even do not know my paper on my assignments this week. That's how rough it is.
Miss Hans, we are here trying to save the world.
Okay, so when you take that tape off and you go home, you don't pick up the book.
Because I was saving the world.
Ah, I see. So who can save you?
You.
Forget she say she know powerful people, eh? But I wasn't
Oh
allowed.
yeah, but
Oh.
they're marking a paper though.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, that's all.
Okay.
I did not say that.
Very powerful people. Don't do that to her.
Yeah, and I agree. She
Boy,
gets
your-
Spanish cards for them marking a paper.
Meetings with
Your
powerful
classmates ain't loyal, boy.
You're gonna go block you.
Your classmates ain't got your back, boy.
None of her powerful meeting persons marking a paper. And they ain't reading for her either, unit 6. But anyhow, I understand busy weeks. I'm messing with you all, but I understand completely. But I want y'all to take this serious because this is a very important topic. And we all got things going on. I get my own paper. I had 4 exams this week and I passed all my exams. I'm teaching y'all tonight.
Congrats. I believe in you.
Way to go, way to go, way to go.
So Rashida, I was saving the world for me and you at the same time, okay?
There you go, bing.
Exactly.
God is good.
All the
Now,
time.
tell me everything you know about sanctions.
Well, there's a lot to know and there's a lot to learn. But in a nutshell, sanctions are designed to cause a country, a person, a place, a thing, and I'm just being very broad with it, to act in a certain behavior or to change a certain behavior. Yes? In its simplest form, that's what the sanction is and what it does.
When I did intermediate, when we were doing sanctions, what stood out to me about it is like almost like they use it to correct behavior. Like I remember something about when international peace is threatened, right? So I looked at it as like my daughter, when she's being naughty, I'm kind of essentially giving her a sanction by putting her in timeout to try to correct. So that's kind of like how I remembered it. It's kind of
you're right.
far-fetched, but
it's in place. It is in place to change behavior, correct behavior, or to cause people to enact a certain behavior, act in a certain way. So that's what it's about. But sanctions are going to affect, well, not going to affect, affecting all of our lives now. Everybody out here complaining about the price of gas. It ain't gonna get no better with the war that's in Ukraine and Russia. So we have to be aware in our daily lives that 1, we're not breaching any sanctions that are in place, and 2, we constantly stay up to date with sanctions that are being put in place every day. Because we think, oh, we're in this side of the world, we're in the Western world, it ain't gonna bother us. Yeah, it's going to bother us because it's affecting trade globally, it's affecting gas and oil globally, and it's going to affect commodities globally. Because what you could have gotten a couple of weeks ago that you probably didn't even know come out of Russia, and I'm only talking about vodka, you probably can't get now. So it's a very interesting topic. And I think that it's one that we as compliance professionals, or all of those of you who want to be compliance professionals, have to pay close attention to. So could somebody read the learning objectives for me, please?
I can.
Thank you.
The learning objectives. The purpose of this unit is to consider the preventative measures that firms can put in place to manage the risk of becoming involved with money laundering, terrorist financing, and proliferation financing. Examine what sanctions are and why they are important. Define types of sanctions used within global framework and how they are implemented in a variety of sanctions regimes. explain how firms are required to respond in order to meet key responsibilities, and to discuss the objectives of sanction screening and consider how this can mitigate a firm's sanction risk.
So thank you so much, Ebony. Donna, are you able to kind of give us an overview of the sanctions regime in place? We talked about this, and I think early in one of our classes, but I'm only picking on you because I know where you're employed.
Sans, why you do that?
I know.
I had a rough day. I was right here trying to catch myself. You called my name, I almost sent lightning bolts from me just now.
Man, you should know the stuff out your head.
Okay, I'm going to tell you what I can remember. There are a few of them currently in place that on a periodic basis, firms have to submit something to say that they are compliant with checking their client base to make sure that they're not conducting business with individuals or entities from certain jurisdictions. I could remember 3 of them offhand. I don't commit this to memory because normally the supervision department deals with this. I'm in risk analytics. But I think it's the Democratic Republic of North Korea, I think, Iran or Iraq. I can't remember the rest, Ms. Sands. But I know 3 of those should be on the listing. Right or wrong? In the right direction? I tried to wake up over here. I was taking a nod.
Well, you all hear that? This chick come to class to sleep on me. Well, what a time.
The signs, I am tired. I'm doing 2 classes. I hear you say you have 3 exams a day. I'm signed up for ICA, and I'm also the commission mandated us to do something else. So I am tired. But that's a basic.
So my two certifications and teaching y'all and working 2 jobs don't count then.
No, that's a lot. I use a superwoman. Hats off to you. You wear an S on your chest.
So I should be the one sleeping. What you saying?
Yes, ma'am.
But yeah, you're in the right direction. You are. So we do have a sanctions regime in place. I think I told y'all before, you can go on the government's website and look at it. It's where the regulators send you information and you have to confirm whether or not you have any of the persons on the list that they send you. If you have any of them in your database, and also even if they don't send it every quarter, you have to confirm that you have checked your database for names against the list during the quarter. So we do have a regime in place for those who report to SEB, that's who they have to send it to. For those who have multiple regulators, then you have to ensure that all of your regulators are aware of your report. And even if it's a nil report, you don't have any, you still have to report that you have not found anyone in your database. They have a whole process in place. If you do find somebody that's on the list that's in your database, then obviously there's an escalation method and process in place to deal with that.
Ms. Sands, if I may add to the discussion to make up for the fact that I was falling asleep, may I?
Go right ahead. Let's see if you could redeem yourself before the end of class.
With relation to sanctions, I mean, I'm with the rest of the class. I did not read the entire chapter. I browsed through it briefly, but based on what's been going on in what's happening on the news, both internationally and locally, I mean, pretty much it gives you an overview on a good idea of how sanctions operate. And I've been pretty much keeping up with that because up until now, I think because I learned about sanctions as a primary understanding of it, and I learned about sanctions in the intermediate class and the introductory class. But to see it put into practice, you read about it on the internet, you read about it in these different case studies. But to actually be living in a day and age where it's being put into practice, I kind of didn't understand how powerful the use of sanctions were until this particular situation between Russia and Ukraine. Because when the United States first came out talking about how they're imposing all these different sanctions, I kind of laughed, I chuckled. I was like, well, what the sanctions supposed to do? My boy killing up people. But then when you get an understanding of how it impacts them, and I think the last resource that they're talking about implementing is banning the Russian oil. So all of these sanctions and different stuff that they're using to affect their financial and economical system, it kind of gives you a clear idea of how these particular instruments, how the sanctions, how they curve behavior, like somebody said earlier, how they curve a country's behavior into conforming and doing what it is that they need them to do. And basically we see how the Bahamas is impacted by these sanctions, because now we're faced, if you look at what's going on in the national news, we're faced with a decision on whether or not we're going to cease from patronizing Russia in terms of purchasing the oil from them. And another thing that I observe now, the US, to me, all this just seems like it seems almost like a big circle, because now the US, who has imposed a whole lot of sanctions on Venezuela. I think Venezuela was one of the most heavily sanctioned countries during the Trump administration, where they really were trying to get the prime minister or president to back down from power. Now you're seeing where the US, now that they're not relying on Russian oil anymore, or they're trying not to rely on Russian oil, they are now making friends or trying to get back close with Venezuela after heavily sanctioning them for so many years.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, so now they're trying to get back with Venezuela, and it all goes back down to who's holding this card. To me, it's like all of this is playing out in the real world. So if you really haven't read the chapter, and if you're listening to the news, you can kind of get an understanding of how all of these things play out in real life. And like I said, up until now, I had a knowledge in theory, but now that all of this is playing out, you can really see how it works. So that's what I wanted to add. That's my 5 cents. Thank you for the audience.
Great analogy. You almost there, girl. You almost out of the naughty corner.
Man, I thought I got to the top of the class with that one. That take on my energy.
You miss. They tell me they ain't read. They ain't tell me they're sleeping.
Okay.
Yes. So you almost out of the naughty corner. But yes, everything you said makes sense. And so I'm hoping, that's why every so often I would drop something in the chat, that you guys are keeping up with the news, because it what you said is exactly what this whole unit is about. The only things you didn't do was break down the different types of sanctions. But yes, we're living in a sanctioned environment at the moment. And if you're following the news, you would recognize planes can't fly into Russia, planes can't fly into Ukraine. There are lots of sanctions and travel bans and banned goods and things of that nature. And so even with financial services, I have been reading and hearing about people who, and they, normal business people, normal people from Russia who went on vacation, and things happen, and they have been locked out of their own bank accounts because of the sanctions. And correspondent banks are not allowed to really deal with certain banks on financial services in Russia. So it's like, what do you do, right? Well, what do you do in situations like that? If you listen to the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom talk about, how they're speeding up certain things, how the oligarchs that have bought up lots of real estate and own a lot of things in the United Kingdom, how they're putting, pressure on them to do certain things. I was on a sanctions webinar just today, and we actually had somebody who lives in Moscow, and he is saying, whilst the West is doing certain things, Russia has their own defense and backup, because if you're trying to leave Russia, they taking 25% straight up. Now you could pause your business, but if they recognize that you're trying to leave, then you're gonna have issues with them just trying to leave, because obviously they don't want their country to be an empty country. In the last 2 weeks, you've got 250 corporations pull out of Russia. Do you have any clue what that is doing to their economy? I think
But
the ruble
did he
has,
expect
the
anything
ruble
less?
has, not that I expect anything less, but you have to think about it like this, Ebony. The people in these situations suffer. It don't be
Yeah,
the people
yeah,
that made the decision.
that
And
is true.
from a humanitarian standpoint, it
Mhm.
it aches my heart to see both countries.
Yeah.
It's the people that suffer. Think about it. When all the clothes stores are leaving, I know they've had a couple of retail clothing stores say no, they're not going to pull out, right? But when the clothes stores are leaving and the retail stores are leaving, I mean, and what is going to happen to the people? Yes, the country went to war, but the average person ain't had nothing to do with that. Nothing.
Okay.
And so I think too, as people, we have to think, yes, the sanctions are geared to do certain things. And yes, they do have some exceptions for humanitarian purposes. But let's be honest, I mean, the civilian casualty in Ukraine is just nonsensical. And then the Russian people are the ones suffering because of what their leader decided to do. So I think countries are finding it difficult to strike a balance, because yes, there are things and attitudes and behaviors that needs to be reversed, but in the meantime, people suffering.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's even gotten to the point where now if you're in any way connected with Russia, what you're finding is that, you're being discriminated against. I mean, obviously we've been given, I guess, warnings from the government to be cautious from a financial institution standpoint. There hasn't been any kind of guidance beyond that point. But what you're finding is, and this is what I'm hearing is that, certain institutions now, if you're connected in any way to Russia, if you have a passport or anything, that is being monitored, and that account is being treated very differently now. So it's sad to see that one person has caused so much pain for, well, not only the Ukrainians, obviously, and what's going on there, but also the innocent Russians, because not all Russians are bad, so it's just sad to see.
Hey, David, I'll tell you, like I told someone today, you're not being discriminated against. We're just standing in solidarity with Ukraine.
But that's not fair to the people of Russia who have absolutely nothing to do with this war. Yep. Who's going to stand in solidarity with them?
Yep.
That's right.
But this is a prime example of, acting without thinking, because I feel as if he couldn't have clearly thought this through. You can't be that selfish that you didn't think of your country before doing this.
He thought about himself.
And that's all it is. You being selfish, and to make the statement that anybody that tries to get in the way. Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, but I mean, but think about it this way too. You know how Black people go generally. Black people will fight amongst themselves. They like, sit down, brother. They will fight amongst themselves.
But no outside could come in. Exactly.
Okay, so when they started floating them things around about the way they would treat Black people over there, the Americans gone, and the African Americans like, okay, we was hoping a lot of y'all didn't die, but you know what?
You're talking about Ukraine or Russia?
I'm talking about the way they were treating the Black persons in both countries.
Okay, because I've been hearing a lot about the treatment of Black people in Russia. In Ukraine. That's why I asked the question. Okay.
Well, the thing about it is, with the sanctions going on, it's going to affect all of us. Trust me. I didn't know how much Ukraine contributes to the global economy. I didn't know how much Russia contributed to the global economy in terms of commodity. When you talk about grain and wheat and corn, I think Ukraine supplies, I think it is a third of the corn, I think, to the European people. And like the stats today was overwhelming. It was overwhelming to hear who is going to, because they broke it down, who is going to plant the corn and who is going to plant the products, because apparently April, March and April is planting season for certain commodities, right? Grains. But if everybody is actually fighting in the war, at least all of the able-bodied persons, who could do that? And if they're not in the ground by the end of April, there will be no harvest. And you are talking about a global percentage. There is no way that Europe and the world can live without the gas and oil from Russia. It's just not possible. Now they are trying to cause the, United Arab people, the Gulf states to produce more oil. But we have been saying that you've been too oil dependent and fuel dependent for years. Yes? And here it is. The world cannot live without it. You cannot just say, okay, we're going to ban all of the oil exports from Russia. So what you all think will happen to Europe? Who getting it? And the other countries, the Eastern European countries that rely on it. You're not only talking now about 2 countries, you're talking about affecting a whole region, millions and millions of people. They talked today about the chips that make that go in the chips for the phone. They're made in Ukraine because you need the nickel, whatever the I think the metal is. It was flabbergasting to hear the statistics today about the contributions of those countries to the global economies. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is what this is all about. It's like, yeah, them two fighting, but them two fighting makes up a whole lot of commodity and natural, like metal products. Even the batteries for hybrid vehicles.
Wow.
7% of what is used in the world comes from those 2 countries. Can you imagine? And all of us want to get a Tesla, and all of us want to get these hybrid vehicles, yeah? If those things don't make it to the market, what y'all think will happen? This is bigger. This is bigger than just what we're seeing on the surface. So the sanctions that countries are trying to put in place, I understand why. But in the meantime, you have to think about the people who are sick. Think about the refugees. Who is going to take them in? And when you take them in, who's going to pay the hospital bill, the medical bill? Because a lot of them hurt, a lot of them sick. A lot of the children have not had the COVID vaccines, or even if you're against the COVID vaccines, a lot of them have the medicine to try and keep them from getting COVID. COVID's still real. The war ain't do nothing to COVID except turn the newspapers from stop talking about it.
Yeah, it's very sad, and it's just, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, how far do you go? I mean, in terms of the Western countries, you don't really know what to do, because this guy is saying nuclear war and stuff like that as well. So it's kind of trying to find that middle ground and trying to find to negotiate and find ways to resolve this issue. But I don't see how. I don't see the way out, because this guy is just crazy.
There's no middle ground. The casualties are far-reaching. There's no middle ground. And so even with the sanctions that countries are trying to put in place, the reality of it is we're so interconnected as a world now.
Yeah.
You cannot just isolate countries. It won't work.
Yeah. Yeah.
It won't work. And you're talking about a country that is on the border of Russia. Yes? But also in Europe.
Yeah, it stands. I read a couple of articles because I was kind of like one-sided towards Ukraine, but now I'm somewhat in the middle, not saying that I'm, siding with what Russia is doing. But I read an article that was, I think it was written by one of the US presidents, Henry Kissinger, was his name. But apparently this feud between Ukraine and Russia has been going on for some time. In this article that I read that was published in 2014, it described how they've made several attempts to resolve their conflict, because Russia and Ukraine hold very close historic ties. And it talks about how they've tried to resolve their conflict and how other countries have gotten involved. European countries have gotten involved to help them resolve their conflict, because this just didn't start February 24th. This was going on for some time now, years and years and years. But personally, I feel like countries, the Western countries, because from what I understand, they have this international agreement that the Western countries are not supposed to interfere too much on what's going on in the European countries or whatever, and likewise, vice versa. But I just feel like with the US involvement in Ukraine, like how they've been, Ukraine has been trying to join NATO, which there's other international bodies and groups that they can join, like the European Union, that sort of stuff. But I just feel like the US egging them on to say, well, you know, making it seem possible that they can join NATO. I think that's part of the reason why the conflict escalated. And I just feel like personally, just my feelings, persons might disagree. I just feel that the US could have done a little bit more in terms of not letting it escalate to this extent. I just feel like Ukraine got a lot of bad advice. And because they got some bad advice, or whomever advised them wrongly, the decision they took into trying to join NATO kind of pissed, excuse my language, but it kind of ticked, what's his name, Vladimir off, to the point where he said, you know, this is it. Because if you can see that he's made several attempts to sort of like reach some sort of peace treaty with them, or some sort of agreement with, okay, you guys don't do this, I don't do this. But time after time after time, he's seen that whatever they agreed to, it fell away. Whatever agreement they came up with, it fell away because Ukraine is having different other countries getting involved in their decision making. If you have a country that you're neighboring, like let's say the Dominican Republic and Haiti, they're neighboring countries. If they have agreements in place to say, well, hey, y'all don't do this and we don't do this and we can get along just fine. How are you going to have other persons who live way across the globe tell you what to do and how you should govern, or how you should govern your people and govern your country? I just feel like Ukraine and Russia should have really tried to get that agreement to stick that they were trying to put in place, as opposed to just finding a way out by joining NATO. I mean, that's just my personal opinion, because when I read deeper and deeper into it to understand why they were feuding, it goes a bit deeper than what we just see on the news. It goes a bit deeper than what we see on the surface.
Well, Donna, that's a good analogy. But when you have time to read all that, you want to read my Unit 6. Man, y'all, it's something else, you know. Y'all can kill.
Miss Nance, I can't win for losing sake. I trying to gain a couple points now.
That's why she was falling asleep. She tired.
Don't worry. You to the top of the class right now. But you were right. So
let me tell you, to work, that's all we discuss in the work. It's like you cannot care what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, because like stuff like that, we have to be on top of stuff like that. Because when these sanctions start to kick in, you know, our workload get heavier, because we got to make sure everything, well, not me, my particular department, but you hear it around you, we got to make sure certain things in place. So from a regulatory perspective, that's all we're talking about at work. You cannot go anywhere in the office and they're not talking about it.
I agree, and I think a lot of this goes back before Vladimir. This was before him, as it relates to the Warsaw Convention and then the NATO Convention. So I think we tend to forget things that's not in our, recent history. However, I feel as well that countries should be allowed, if you're a sovereign, you should be allowed to make your own decisions. You don't tell me who I should be friends with. And I think that has been a challenge because of the type of rule and person Mr. Putin is. However, if I am going to be your neighbor and we have an agreement, I expect you to stand by it. But if I change my mind, I change my mind. Yes, the sanctions and the actions, I don't think that they are all thinking, how is this going to affect the citizenry? That's my concern, right? And you are causing our citizens lots of pain because if you can't travel for school, you know how much people were stuck in Russia? Students, global people, expatriates who lead companies. If you can't get out of Russia, you can't get your money, you can't get this and that, it's a problem. People stuck in Ukraine, same thing. I think the sanctions are designed to kind of force Russia to do some things. But on the other hand, you have to think about what are the things that Ukraine have to do. This war is two ways, and ain't no way about it. People from both countries are suffering. So at the end of the day, we have to see and look to see, you know, if the sanctions, the global sanctions, are actually doing what it's supposed to do. Because to be honest with you, I really don't think Mr. Putin cares about the sanctions at this moment. I think he knows he has some leverage and he's prepared to use it. So the UN sanctions, you know, they threatening plenty of things against them. The UN have sanctions. Their financial sanctions being put against them, and against a lot of other countries to try and get them to behave a certain way. But like I keep saying, and I keep going back to it, who is actually benefiting? One, because if you look at the geopolitics involved, if you make a gap, right, for a need, because the Russian goods and services are sanctioned, so what you letting China do? Are you then making space for China, even though China has been kind of cautious and kind of been backpedaling over the last couple of days? Is that what you're doing? Either way, you're trying to shift the balance, right? And the pendulum can swing left or right. It ain't no two ways about that. So I think we have to be aware of what's going on in the world as it relates to sanctions. We have to ensure that we know what the regimes are, and we have to, like Donna has been saying, keep up, because you're living in it. This is something that we are actually watching play out. How many countries we've known have been sanctioned? Cuba been sanctioned for forever, and they still living. It may not be the same quality that we think, or quality that we think, but how much people we know in this country is go to Cuba for plenty services? Yes. So sometimes I tend to ask myself, is the sanctions really worth it? What do you all think?
To an extent, but I'm just trying to figure out like how far they're gonna go with it. I mean, that's what I'm really trying to figure out, like how far will they take it? Because there's only so much, like you said, you listed all of the products that the products and commodities that we get from Ukraine and Russia. How long can we do without these things? And maybe they're thinking that the heavier the sanction, the quicker Russia will comply, and then we can just go back to normal and get this all done with. I don't know. I don't know if
It's probably not going to happen. What I think is that one of the main goals is for everybody to get off gasoline powered vehicles. That's the Green New Deal. That's what they're trying to bring about. So just how they want Tesla to shut down all the electric cars in Russia. They could do that just from the click of a button. They could shut down all of Tesla's vehicles. So imagine if that power came into government hands when everybody don't have a gasoline vehicle no more. They could easily shut down your car and you can't move. So that's a dangerous thing they're requesting now. The blame isn't really all on Russia. 2 days before Russia invaded Ukraine, Biden stopped. Well, actually, when he came into office, he put a stop to the pipeline so America could produce its own gas and oil. But he put a stop to that and made America, this side of the world, really truly dependent on foreign oil. I mean, we still have Canada, but he made America more dependent on import from Russia. And so now look what's happening. But Biden The Biden administration is all about this Green New Deal where everybody is off of gasoline vehicles. And that's very dangerous if a government gets on some that kind of technology where they can shut down your vehicles. Because they're requesting for Tesla to do it, so the technology is there. So it's a very dangerous thing. And we got to be careful how Bahamas plays in this gray area in regards to that.
And partly because they're going for this global centralized government system where the government controls everything.
Right. I didn't want to go there because I don't know. People just call it a conspiracy theory, but I mean, the reality is that's what's happening. That's what they want. They want it's public record. Yeah, you know, it's called the Agenda 2030. It's on the United Nations website. They want to.
Some politicians publicly speak about it.
Yeah. So I didn't want to go there, but that's exactly what's happening. One world government, one world currency. Right now, Biden administration is talking about is asking the central bank to go into cryptocurrency to make an official cryptocurrency for American as the American currency. So it's getting there. It's serious. So I wouldn't be surprised if this whole Russia-Ukraine war thing is a setup for the Green New Deal, or to bring about further currency. You know, you put citizens, you box citizens into a corner hard enough where they give up all rights and just say, okay, government, save us. And so we're not going to drive any more gasoline-powered vehicles, give us electric vehicles, and which is kind of hypocritical and counterproductive because it's going to require more fossil fuels to power electric vehicles. If you want to talk about climate change, where you're going to get the fossil fuels to give you the energy to power anything electric if everybody's running electric cars. California, the leaders in America in terms of electric vehicles, they having a hard time providing the electricity because all kind of people running Teslas. And they don't really have the infrastructure, the electrical infrastructure to do that. We're ways off from nuclear energy. We are ways off from using solar energy and hydro energy in its full capacity. So it's very counterintuitive to really wean everybody off gas-powered vehicles. It's a slippery slope. And like Donna said, it's setting everything up for this one world government system that people have been talking about for 30 years. But when people bring it up, they think it's conspiracy theory, but leaders in politics and in governments are vocalizing it, and they're saying it as a part of public record now. So you can't really hide from that fact.
Thanks, Patrick. Very interesting views. Anybody else? Patrick Scarrow, what is one world talking?
No, he didn't. He spoke truth. A hard truth too.
Right. So I want to hear some other people discuss what they think about it, because we're living in it. We're actually talking about Unit 6, but we're talking about our experiences in Unit 6 right now. So it's more than Donna and Patrick and David in this class tonight. And Felicia and Ebony. Let's go, let's have a conversation about it. This is Unit 6. You already read it, so we gotta talk about it. And then there was silence. Nobody else have any kind of contribution other than Donna and Patrick?
I just want to ask a question. So what's going to happen? I know that they said that they had a ceasefire, and so they were trying to get, some of the people out of the country, which is still crazy because the war is still going to go on. And so I heard you saying, okay, well, if the things don't plant, the wheat and the corn and stuff are not planted by the end of April, then there's no harvest. But I mean, looking beyond that, what's going to happen when, okay, the war does stop, and so literally they've blown up the ground. So even if you want to plant anything, you still can't plant anything. And so the ripple effect of that is people are obviously out of jobs. And so my question for you is, what are the leaders of the other countries going to do when it comes to, I guess, dealing with Russia and Ukraine moving forward? Is that going to affect, I guess, not only the way they do financial business, but the way they do trades and all those other things?
It's going to affect the global economy, full stop. We are all going to be feeling the effects of this war for years to come. Harsh reality.
I think like
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Do you think that, I'm thinking of Haiti now, where a lot of the Haitians are trying to flee, and I'm going to use it as an example. There are other countries do the same thing. Based on what's happening, I foresee that happening with Russia too. So you may have not just the U.S., other countries, maybe even countries in the Caribbean, who may now start having this inflow of immigrants coming in, which is concerning. Apart from the wheat and the gas, definitely has me concerned. It's scary for me, and I'll be honest with you. It's like Donna at work. All the TVs in the bank are on this thing. All the kitchen and water cooler talks are about this, and I hear it. I participated in it to a certain extent, but it's scary for me. And then when I look at the TV at times and I see some of I have a very soft spot in my heart for children and elderly people. And when I see the children digging to find a blanket, and just it's hard. I think about my children, and I just thank God that we're here and we're gonna feel the effects of it for sure. We are already feeling some of it to a certain extent. We are gonna feel it, but I'm just grateful that we're not in it per se. And like I said, I am concerned about the ripple effects because, like Nasan said, we're gonna be feeling this for years to come. That's my 2 cents.
The thing that I think about, Ebony, is how they gonna cross the Atlantic Ocean to get here?
When you are desperate, you find a way.
I think for me, they're going to flood the European Union for sure.
Okay.
Because you may be able to find a way for a couple of people, a family here or there. But when you're a large landmass, there are lots of ways for you to cross borders. It's a whole different story to cross an Atlantic Ocean.
Yeah.
Especially if you are a refugee with no money.
Sans, one of the concerns that I had, I was reading something last week. One of the concerns that I have, especially with doing this paper, was the person, these refugees, they're traveling, they're moving now into this part of the world. I don't know if they're gonna stay or what, but I'm afraid about, I'm scared about terrorism being in the influx and terrorist acts and these people, migrating to this side of the world. We don't know who they are. They're gonna be, I guess, given asylum for whatever reason. And so do you think that that's something that's also going to happen? I guess now or later on down or whatever, because we don't know who these people are. I mean, we're not used to, I guess as everyone knows, we're not used to high levels of terrorist acts, at least not on this side.
So I have a question, Rashada, to answer your question. Even though my mommy told me you don't answer a question with a question, I'm gonna do it tonight. How often do you go to the United States of America?
Not that often.
Okay, Do you go to the UK?
Well, I haven't been in some years.
Okay, so that means you'd be in Nassau plenty then.
Mhm.
Okay, because this is how I see it. I go to Florida regularly. I am going to a land with domestic and international terrorism happening all the time. Yes? So, whereas I have a choice to stay in the Bahamas and just deal with the criminals that we have here and the criminal element, I can choose to go someplace else. Something like that, for me personally, it doesn't concern me, only because we have terrorism in our own country when we talked about it. Anything on anybody that tries to inflict based on the UK's definition, I'm using the UK's definition. I mean, every day somebody getting gunned down. And even though it may be targeted, some of them, plenty armed robberies, plenty, lots of things going on. I don't want us to fall into the bias of, oh, they from that side of the world, so terrorism. You understand what I'm saying? Because for me, that's a bias. Not because they from Russia. I mean, and I've been to Russia, I tell you, and it was beautiful. The people, some of the nicest people I've met while in Russia. So that's like saying all Bahamians, whatever we want to call ourselves, right? I don't want us to get in that bias. That's like saying all Black people.
Well,
That's
no,
like saying all
I'm
Muslims.
not trying to be biased. I'm just thinking from a cultural aspect. That's the only aspect I'm looking at it from. And I'm not looking at color or race or anything like that, just from a cultural aspect.
They ain't settled yet because they can't be settled yet. Think about it. The things we do in this country and say and act and be, this is not a country they want to come to and try and take over. Now, a few of them with money, because I don't want you all to sleep. We have a significant amount of Russian millionaires that call the Bahamas home. They have bought Cypriotic passports. They have bought passports from the Nevis. They have bought passports from Antigua and Anguilla. So, but they're originally from Russia. So, to be honest with you, they're here.
Yep.
They're in Lightfoot Key. They're in Alford Bay. They're in Albany. They're here.
Yes, they are. They can get their passport automatically just by being a high net worth individual.
But not a passport. The Bahamas, we don't do the passports, but they can get permanent residency buying a house for $750,000. Right. So I don't want us to get into that bias. However, what we need to think about and continue to think about is, how does the sanction, is it working? Or do you see it working? Because a lot of the sanctions that's been in place, like I said, Cuba been sanctioned for forever, and they found a way to continue in their existence. So for me, I'm thinking Russia's gonna find a way.
Yeah, I think so too. I agree. Because I think they have the resources too. I mean, I think I read somewhere they already started using crypto since all this heavy sanctioning happened. So I feel like they have the resources too. And, you know, China is pretty silent, but from what I understand, China is one of their allies. I mean, that's from what I read and what I understand. And don't sleep on China, because China is very strategic. China plans things years and years ahead of time. So with them having a country like that as being one of their allies, I think China strives to be self-sufficient. And if they can partner with a country like China, then they don't, all this sanction stuff, they don't really need to care about all of that. So like you said, how effective will it be?
I think I would say China is their ally. I think China is an opportunistic country, in my opinion, but I think China is also concerned about the West. China is walking on a very tight line, because once China starts to deal with Russia, they're going to get cut off from the West. And even though they try to act self-sufficient, they're not. The world is globally interconnected, because I can tell you, plenty of people who ain't in China shopping on Alibaba and Shein. And if that gets cut off through a sanction, they're going to suffer. Their yen does not trade on the global market. And Hong Kong their, special territory, Hong Kong in lockdown as we speak. People are dying in the thousands a day in Hong Kong. Nobody's talking about it. And that is their international financial center. People with money and wealth has been flocking from Hong Kong from the COVID start, from 2019. There's been a mass exodus of wealthy people from Hong Kong to the UK because they used to be British, remember?
Mhm.
So I think China is kind of sitting back trying to say, okay, let me just watch this to see how it's going to play out. Because whilst they can come to Russia's aid, they risk losing the entire Western world.
Okay.
So it's a very delicate balance for them. And I agree, they're very strategic. However, in this one, I have seen them kind of backpedaling and softening their tone as it relates to the entire conflict. They're not as aggressive against the rest of the world as I thought that they were going to be. And I understand why.
I guess they say they have their own problems they sorting out.
They're in a pickle. You help Russia and lose the rest of the world.
Yeah. And was it they banned some digital asset? What was it? Was it Bitcoin, or am I hearing more of CFD was banned from China? Something they banned recently. What is it? Is it crypto, or do they have very tight restrictions on crypto?
I'm not sure because I'm not really keeping up with that side of it. But it doesn't make sense for them to do it because Japan recognizes crypto as a currency.
Okay.
Japan is the first country globally, and Japan sits in Asia.
Okay. I'm probably gonna look back at that article. It's something I read recently where it was something digital that they banned in China. Something about it, but I probably need to look back at that article.
It may be a specific one, you know what I mean?
Yeah, because they have so many of them, and a lot of them are not. Yeah.
Another thing with the sanctions is every country have their own regime. If you think about it, EU have it, UK have it, US have it, this one have it, the next one have it. So how successful can it actually be? Because even though they may be allies, they're banning different things for different reasons. What do you all think about that? Is it really united? That was a question for consideration.
Can you repeat for me, please? I'm sorry.
I said every country or region have their own sanctions, right? Their regime.
Yeah.
So the UK have their own regime, the US have their own regime, the EU have their own regime, and they're looking out for their sovereignty, right? And their country.
Yeah.
So is it really a united front? Because if you think about it, I could find a loophole in one, find a loophole in the next, find a loophole in the next, you know what I mean? So for me, my question to you guys was, do you think that it's a united front? And if not, is it going to succeed?
It's not
united
front,
meaning all of the 12 first world countries.
It's not, because I think at the end of the day,
it may appear so, or it may seem as though there is a united front or some form of solidarity between the countries, but in essence or in actuality, these countries are imposing these sanctions to protect their, socioeconomic and political systems in general. Like, the goal is to protect themselves, even though it may appear or it may seem that it is for unity. My view is every man for himself, in essence, behind the scene, but on the surface or prima facie, it would appear or seem as though it's for unity or some purpose or another.
Thanks, Rodrigo. I think somebody else was saying something. Ebony?
What Rodrigo said. And another thing too, to add to what she said though, with the different countries having their own regimes, it makes it for, okay, let's look at what's happening now in Russia. So let's say the UK or the US put different sanctions on them. They have the option, as Donna mentioned, of going to another country that doesn't have those same sanctions or to this place to do for aid. So that they like Cuba can still be um can still carry on, if I may say it that way.
Even if they go to a country that doesn't have these quote unquote sanctions in place just as yet, right? Like let's say country X doesn't have it. Country X still has to do business with country A. So even though X doesn't have the sanctions in place, their counterparty still is in country A, so it still can't happen.
Mom, I'm going to need you to break that down for those of us who don't work in financial services, because when you start talking about counterparty,
sorry,
country in country, yeah, put that in regular language. Thanks.
Sorry. Okay, so Commonwealth Bank, right? I have an account with Commonwealth Bank and I need to send some money to America. No, I need to send some money to Italy. Before that gets to Italy, I need to send that to Wells Fargo that is in the United States. Once Wells Fargo gives the okay, then they'll send it to Italy. So back down to these sanctions. Italy may not have a sanction on them, but I said United States, right? The United States has a sanction on them. So even though Italy doesn't have a sanction, so I could send money from the Bahamas to Italy, but I need to find a counterparty bank in another country to get this money to Italy. So if all the counterparty banks in countries that have this sanction on Italy, the money can't get to Italy. So no matter which bank in which country I send it to, they're going to stop it and reject that payment, and Italy will not get that money. So right now with these people in Russia, that's why I say he can't be this selfish that he didn't think about these people, because before it affects his country as a whole, it's affecting each and every household. You understand? You have these Russians who innocent millionaires at that, and they can't touch their money. Why? Even though they don't live in Russia, they probably live in the United States, but guess what? You have a Russian passport? I have to lock your account. Lock it. So it's gonna have, well, already it's having a ripple effect. It's crazy. I'm back early in the class talking about ownership. I made a comment down the line of that's what do you think is happening now? And I say that to say, I'm a Russian. I own ABC Corp. I own 10% of ABC Corp. So I'm a beneficial owner. By law, I have to be KYC'd. I have to provide my documents. But if I sell 0.01% of that company, I no longer by law have to be KYC'd. So even if just on paper, I say, guess what? I can sell 0.01% of my shares to Joey. I only putting that on paper. Joey don't have nothing to do with it. Joey is my friend. Joey doing this for me. But at the end of the day, they can't ask me nothing because I don't have to give you nothing. I don't own 10%. So back to what I was saying, where we only go on by what we see. You provide these documents to me and I don't have no proof, even though now it's common sense. That's what they're going to do. But we still have to have proof that that's what they did. And where am I going to find this proof from? Who was going to actually come and say, yeah, he only do that? So no one.
And there you have it, spoken from a banker, well, a compliance person in the banking industry. Lots of people earned their monies legally, and because of what is happening, they have no access to it. Y'all, I don't know if you all follow football. I'm no football person, but in the UK, the Chelsea football club is like the most popular one. It's owned by a Russian. He had to literally give control to a corporate body so it don't get taken away from him. You know how many,
He's selling
how
it
much,
now.
huh?
He's selling it now, or trying to sell
I
it.
mean, he ain't gonna be able to control it no time soon. So what's
He's
the point
trying
of
to
owning
sell
it?
it. He's trying to sell it for much less than it's worth at this time.
Because he is trying to offload an asset that he knows, should this war continue, it's the value for him is going to decrease. What are you gonna do with the money? And the UK locking down all of their accounts.
This is a prime modern day example of something being taken away in the blink of an eye. Literally overnight, these people just locked down.
From one pandemic into the next.
If you check the UK's registry, the company's registry, so many Russian oligarchs own real estate in the United Kingdom. It's unbelievable. You all remember the story a couple of years ago with the people who were getting killed because the KGB people was still killing? It was on a documentary. And I'm like, but I thought the KGB gone over with the Cold War. And this me in my head now, because I don't remember no war like that. However, because people were in Russia, in the UK, and they had already exported their wealth, and they thought they were living safe in the UK. No. A lot of things caught up with them. And two, a lot of people who are friends with Vladimir Putin, they can't spend $1 if they have $1 trillion. Because all of his close friends are on a sanction list. All of them.
And to speak to that, you have some people who would have even a personal account. You know, I have a personal account. I'm an American with a personal account, and I have someone on it just as a signatory, and that person is a Russian. Well, then all my money get freeze too, because that person is a Russian. So you have people who really have nothing to do with this as an American. Why are you holding my money? Because you have a Russian on this account. That's how serious this is right now. So you have some people who crying, oh, their children's school fee needs to be paid. Okay, it can't move.
What's the value of that dollar now? I heard
It's decreased by 50% in the last 3 weeks.
Pardon?
It has decreased by almost 50% in the last 3 weeks.
Wow. Because I heard, I'm assuming it's little to nothing now. Okay. Wow. That's wow. But I cannot believe that Putin, that is, was that clueless to not understand or realize the extent his action of the extent of the ramifications of his action. I think to some extent he had an idea, but I just don't know if he really cares. And that is where my concern is more.
Doesn't care. That I feel as if he's just looking for fame and power right now.
Yeah,
that's all it is. For you to say, or anybody that tries to get in my way, who are you? Okay, watch this. That's all it is. He's selfish, and you ever watch documentaries where these serial killers only do it so they could be famous? Like legit, you kill people just so people could know you as the duct tape.
Know who you are.
Exactly. That's all this is. He looking for fame. That's all it could be. Sorry.
Personally, too, I feel like, well, I'm of the opinion that he should be charged with war crime. I agree with you completely, Felicia, because everything he's doing is not so much. I mean, I understand the political aspect of it, but I think his decisions are one-sided and just, straight out just him being, I wouldn't say a man, quote unquote, because I don't want to offend the men in here, but it's egotistical. It's just, I think he should be charged, like, because there's absolutely no reason for him to be acting the way he's acting. Like, he's not even open to attempting to settle, to be amicable. Like, it's ridiculous. So
But this same country that, you know, I guess he feel as if they so wealthy and they so strong. He is not only offending, but he is hurting his own people. What you think will happen now when you already fool with my livelihood now? You can't think I standing wrong and strong with you no more. So you're gonna see how so many Russians now are gonna turn on him and on that country. Sad to say, but that's what's gonna have to happen. It's
that's why I put it in the chat.
me and my
Outside
child.
of that, I know.
Anyway.
Outside of that, I know this may actually be off topic, but just as simple as this was been going on, believe it or not, I've read articles where Russian soldiers have begun to like sabotage the war. In essence, they've started to do things where they would be incapable or unable to, you know, attack Ukrainians. So as simple as that, like the country hasn't, I mean, the country has been impacted, yes, but that is just the very start of everything that Felicia has just pointed out. Literally, like, they are in the war, and the Russians are, some of them, not all, are attempting to sabotage the war just so that they don't have to fight the Ukraine.
We have to, because at this point now, even though, like, you know, these millionaires we talking about, right? Millionaires. How we carry on bad for $2. How you think these millionaires feel, you know, and they innocent right now. They used to a way of life. They have family members to take care of. And because of your decision, and 2-1, I wasn't even on your run. I could care less what was going on with you because I was making my million. Now you have my money hold up. By law, I can't have no bunch of money with me because you're gonna lock me up. So all now my money within the bank, you have hold up. You don't care about me. My family can't eat. We used to eat and love. So what, you think I gave this tuna now? You gotta go.
That's why I put in the chat that a Russian businessman put a bounty on Putin's head for $1 million. That's what's going to start to happen. Because we used to, not we, but like poor people, I feel like they can find a way. You know what I mean? Rich people, when they're used to probably a certain level or standard of a lifestyle, they're not going to want to go back.
With us in a hurricane, we know we go into canned goods. These people who don't know a hurricane, what is that? Oh, it's raining outside. I just have to stay inside to eat lobster. I can't go to the restaurant to eat lobster. That's fine. This is who we dealing with here. This is a shock for them.
Well, it's something that they have to learn how to deal with and that's why I guess countries are trying to put sanctions in place to help persons like them, those people that earn their money legitimately, those people that have finally, you know, gotten the way of life, and now it's just been taken away from them. And so that's the whole gist of having a sanctions regime, to try and get people to turn away from what it is that they're doing, because you are affecting the entire world. And yes, we understand that we expect wars and rumors of wars to happen. A lot of times, like I said, the casualty is the regular people, the citizenry. Yeah. And so when we think about sanctions and we think about how people and countries should comply, right about now, ain't nobody complying with nothing that don't look like, because since the war, y'all had anything with COVID?
COVID gone.
Okay.
You take the words out of my mouth, Felicia. What COVID?
COVID gone. We don't need no more tests. We don't need no more vaccine. Yeah, COVID finished. That finished. We in war now.
But the reality of it is, COVID is still very rampant in that part of the world. So here you have people, one, going to war. So, you know, they're in close proximity. Two, people who getting injured and still, you know, could surviving. Three, people who are just already medically challenged. And then in those countries, they have a lot of older people too, because they live like pretty long lives. All of that is now going to be a challenge for the neighboring countries, because here you are. You can't be putting sanctions on Russia for joining helping me and my people. Which country is going to take in the refugees? Who gonna pay all that bill? That money got to come from somewhere. So even from the perspective of the persons that are imposing the sanctions, I think that they need to think not only about, okay, we're trying to get this country to change their ways, but we got to think about how else we can help. Because when you start sanctioning countries, you're affecting the citizenry. And then you got to be able to put your hand in your pocket or your treasury, whichever one, to help the people. So when you have sanctions regimes, as like we said, the UK have a regime, the US have a regime, the European Union have a regime, the United Nations have a regime. When you think about the regimes that are in place and you think about how it actually works in person, like sometimes it just doesn't really add up per se, because a lot of the things that have been like put in place from a political standpoint, I think they try to consider the humanitarian aspects. But if you can't get no money into the country and you can't leave, what is that going to say? What is that going to, equate to for regular people? And then when you put financial sanctions against countries and people, then it goes into a whole new sphere. Because whilst I might have made my money, like Felicia's saying, legally, I can't touch it. What then are you expecting me to do? So you're pushing people box into corners, right? I think all of these things are things that need to be talked about and need to be considered. And remember before we had our sanctions regime, we used to use the OFAC list. Anybody familiar with OFAC? Felicia, you should be familiar with OFAC.
Yes, Office of Foreign Assets Control.
Yeah, that's what it is. But I mean, they have been known for the last couple of years to be the sanctions people. You better don't breach no OFAC sanction. Every system that every bank that I've worked for implemented the OFAC sanctions list. All payments, incoming and outgoing, was running against that list. And if your name on OFAC, ain't nothing happening. Now you can always ask if you have to make a payment for a specific reason, you can ask for an exemption, a one-time exemption, but you have to go through the proper procedures to do that. And we're talking about Russia now, but plenty of people on that OFAC list, plenty countries. North Korea been sanctioned for forever. Libya for forever. Sudan for a very long time. If you think about it, there are lots of countries that are still sanctioned, but because of how the news cycle causes us to think about life, we just see things based on what they say. So this is another thing that you guys are going to have to do as compliance officers. You're going to have to try and get balanced news reporting, not just Western media. Yes? Because there's always three sides to a story, yours, mine, and the truth. Y'all agree?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So how are you going to get that if you don't actually go out there and seek the information? It's not going to come to you in Western just media. It's not just going to happen like that. Okay, it's 7:50 and I have been chatting for a good minute. Let's take a 10-minute break and we can come back and finish talk about sanctions and how countries need to comply with them and what happens when they don't. Okay? Come back in 10 minutes.
Okay.
Are we all back? Hello?
Yes, we're here.
So in order to have any type of sanctions regime in place, it has to be backed by legislation. Does anybody know what the legislation is in the Bahamas? Excuse me, that backs our sanctions regime? Any of my learned colleagues?
Miss San,
I'm listening.
you said in relation to sanctions, I think the FTRA speaks about some sanctions.
Okay.
I could be wrong. I'm not sure. We want to email.
Anybody else?
Ms. Sands, do they discuss it in POCA?
I don't think so, but I think because POCA is so wide, it covers the criminal element of it.
All right, well, I remember POCA being, or mentioning something.
Ain't nobody go. Alicia, you like go look up things. You don't go and look up on the government website. And I tell you that the sanctions regime on there. Alicia, you have any contribution?
Miss Ann, I ain't gonna lie, I just walked back to this computer. Sorry, we'll be on.
Okay. I was asking about the laws, like the legal things that are in place for the sanctions regime in this country.
In terms of central bank and all that. I mean, okay, I only could contribute to what I deal with, right? And I could take it right back to this whole thing with Russia right now. Every day you will see some type communication come out where, they saying, hey, just making sure you saw this, and we just want to remind you to be guided accordingly, blah, blah, blah. Because at the end of the day, I work at Bank A. My mishap for Bank A, not only could I lose my job and I cause a bad reputation for Bank A because I say, oh, Bank A let this money go. It's going to cause a problem for the Bahamas as a whole. So this ain't bank against bank. All of us now are one. So we just should be guided, because pretty much if you don't follow these sanctions, you could bring down problems for us. We could be fine for you being lazy, eating cookies on the job, and you make sure not stop that transaction. So that's the only thing I deal with on that end. I just know we got to make sure we stop whatever we told to stop.
Right, and I was hoping somebody talked about the actual regime that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Felicia, I was hoping you talked about how central bank and the reporting, we just said it earlier, because that has to come from somewhere, right?
If I know
where does the answer reporting come from?
Where is the what, sorry?
Answer. That's what would we call it? United Nations that?
I don't know. I thought
That
about
is in the Financial Reporting Act.
It's not that. I mean, there's some talk about it in there, but no, the answers just came around in 2019. I mean, the whole sanctions regime that we have in place now is a new one. Remember, we had to fix that to get off the list. Y'all ain't remember. No? Why it seem like I'm talking to myself tonight?
I so lost right now, Ms. Sands. I don't know.
Okay, okay, with the Central Bank, the Securities Commission, don't you have to do reporting to them? Sanctions reporting?
Correct.
Right. I'm asking you, where does that regime get its teeth from? How does that regime have power to be put in place? That's what I'm asking you. Maybe I wasn't clear.
I don't know. But circling back to when you made a comment earlier down the lines of you get these sanctioned country lists and you have to search your database every time it comes out. I could speak to that. You know, even though the list probably seems as if it's the same and nothing changed, even if it's just one name added to it, you still have to search your database to make sure you don't have these persons or these countries in your company's database.
I think I remember that day we was talking about something with the US reporting something. You have to fill out these forms. I can't remember the name, but is that it?
Oh, we were talking about tax that day, I think, when we were talking about
yeah, something like that.
I don't think there's that though, unless this just flying over our head and we cover all that. But I don't know.
Is it the Anti-Terrorism Act?
Could be that too.
Ms. Sands, is it the Anti-Terrorism Act? I'm reading a document.
No, okay, so it's called the United Nations Security Council Sanctions Regime, right? That's when I say answers. Because you know, we abbreviate everything. We abbreviate everything in this part of the world, right? However, this regime came about because we were blacklisted, remember? We had to get off the blacklist and we had to put something in place to assure the rest of the world that we were not, how would I put it, harboring, yes, any unwanted persons, sanctioned persons, however you want to put it.
Does this have anything to do with the evaluation report where they, I guess, gave us some things that we needed to put in place, and that's how all of this came about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, I'm getting there. Okay, getting there. Because I remember that they gave us, when they, I guess, evaluated us. Is this the mutual evaluation report, I think? Is that the name of it?
But we ain't talking about just that report.
No, I know,
we're talking about.
I know when they evaluated us and when they gave their final little summary on us and told us where our deficiencies were, more or less. And once we were able to fix them and prove to them that we fixed it, then that's how we came off the blacklist, correct? Yes, no?
Kind of, sort of, but okay. So that's your homework. Y'all need to find out how the sanctions regime in the Bahamas came to being and how does it work. That's for y'all to find out because y'all gonna need this in your next paper.
Ms. Sands, right quick, you say the United Nations Security Council regime is what gives the regulatory bodies its power? I mean, I know that's kind of answering the homework.
That's what we use in the Bahamas. That's the regime we use in the Bahamas, yeah. I didn't say that's what gives it its power. That's the regime we use. So you have to find out how we were able to use that regime. That's your homework.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, so this unit have a lot of examples on what happens when countries breach the sanctions, regimes that are in place, not countries, people, banks, people that are in place. And you have to remember that sanctions regimes don't just start and stop. They continually add, take off, review. It's an evolving process. And like we talked about for most of the night, there's always a humanitarian aspect to it, right? And to trying to balance that humanitarian aspect. So with a sanctions regime in place, we're taking it down now to how do you, in your institutions, right, design a compliance framework around it. So how does that work in practice? And Felicia, you may be able to help, and anybody else that works in compliance in this group may be able to help and say, how does that look in day-to-day? Not just the sanctions reporting to the regulator, but how does the sanctions regime affect your day-to-day compliance activities?
Because it's almost as if you just pretty much, that becomes a mind of a way of thinking almost. So everything that comes about, even like now, I think that was Donna, who said, everything to work now was just talking about Russia and Ukraine. Like, no matter what happened, you're gonna find a way to somehow incorporate Russia and Ukraine into this scenario to try bring it home. So in saying that, it's like, anytime something happens, you'd be like, well, what you think about that? Well, you think that maybe this would be a problem. You'll just start thinking outside of the box almost about every situation, sometimes thinking too deep.
Okay, so how does that look in your day-to-day though? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
You heard what I said, Felicia? How does that look in your day-to-day? I'm talking about, I don't know if you open accounts or whatever. So how does that look? Anybody else works in compliance?
Anything, like let's say a transaction almost, back to this whole thing, whereas, I'm an Italian. This is my bank account, but because the signatory now has a Russian passport, don't even live in Russia, but has a Russian passport. So even now it's like, even though you're only dealing with these 10 accounts that have some type of Russian nexus, you still, every other account that comes your way, you still digging into it. You're doing more enhanced due diligence for all these transactions because you want to make sure that none of this money going to Russia, going to any entity affiliated with Russia, any individual affiliated with Russia, because at the end of the day too, you don't want your counterparty now come to you saying, well, why would you send that to me if you know that's a Russian payment? So it's almost as, I don't want to say you've given yourself double work, but things that you just would look at and click right away, something that would have taken you probably 2 minutes, now taking you 5 to 10 minutes because you just researching because you want to make sure that you're dotting all your I's and crossing all your T's.
So what I wanted Felicia to say, was that sanctions affects every single solitary part of compliance.
Oh, definitely.
Did y'all hear me? Because I saw a note that my internet was shaky.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So when you onboarding, you have to run your clients against the list, right? And onboarding means accepting a new client. During your regular transaction monitoring, you're looking at the sanctions regime, right? During your regular reviews.
Talking about transaction monitoring, it's so funny that, you know, these transactions that you're so used to seeing for the past year, you've seen the same transactions. So right back to me saying you're so used to clicking it, but now it's like, I know this going to so-and-so, but I still have to check it, which for the past 8 months, I didn't have to check it because everything was good. But now I have to check it just to make sure that no Russian person involved in it. So that's what I was saying when I say it's almost as if you doubling your work because, you know, you never had to do it before, but it's so many things that we now have to do and we can't complain about because we know like this is just the new norm until things, I guess, change somehow. But it affects every aspect, not even just compliance of the bank on the whole, because even the people on the front end now, we ask them like, listen, y'all can check these things before y'all send it to us, you know, like don't send it to me. From you see it have anything to do with Russia, don't send it to me.
Right, and also when you're doing your reviews, right? Somebody who was maybe a medium risk because they're Russian affiliated now become high risk overnight. So that has now spread up your review process because if you were only reviewing them once every 2 years, that's a whole slew of people going every year.
Yep.
So you have to make sure that you know your policies and your procedures and your training and all of those things are affected, and all of those things have to be in place and up to date, not just in place, because you can't be using an old outdated policy or procedure, right? You have to make sure that just the list
and implemented, and it's a lot. It's really a lot.
Right, because you have to make sure that you're screening your clients against not only one sanction list, not only OFAC, but there are a plethora of sanction lists out there. And so if your institution only dependent on one tool, you're going to be in trouble because one tool is missed a lot. So you need a combination of tools. And when I say tools, I'm talking about like WorldCheck, LexisNexis, KYC 360, things like that, to get a full understanding of, okay, the possibilities that are out there.
Like with us, like even if you're only required to use 2 search engines, at the end of the day, if I let something slip through the crack, my boss can say, Felicia, you do that. So it's almost as if now you're butt on the line now. Because if it go, no, the whole team ain't going down, my boss can say, well, who released it? Felicia, why did you release it? So even though we only have to use 2, buddy, you better use 3 or 4 just to make sure that one of the 2 that you normally use didn't miss something.
Yeah, I agree with you because it's going to be you responsible. You have to make sure that everybody, not only the compliance, like you said, I was happy to hear you said with the front office, y'all check that too. This is a team effort. This ain't just sitting in compliance lab. Everybody has to be aware of the sanctions guidelines and the guidance. And training compliance needs to ensure that everybody is sufficiently trained. Because somebody in operations could pick up on something if they're aware of what is supposed to happen. But if they don't know, then, you know, they don't know. You can't blame them for something that they don't know. Yes? Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. You're all very quiet. So the conversation we had tonight kind of covered the sanctions topic. There are specific things that we didn't get into specifically, like you know, the different kinds of sanctions. We talked about travel, we talked about financial, but you guys need to ensure that you read Unit 6. It may happen after you finish your paper, but definitely try and read it because it's something that's going to be in the front of you for a while to come. So you should be familiar with the whole process around sanctions and what is required and what is necessary. Any questions? No questions at all in Unit 6? Okay.